Hello again. A friend of mine on Facebook just tagged me in a post that had this video in it, and I watched the video and I wanted to make a few comments on the video. I think from my background, which was King James only, I was pretty much that from the womb. There's a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions sort of introduced into that world by people like Peter Ruckman and Gail Ripplinger. And when I found that I hadn't been told the whole story, I was sort of offended. Even through 4 years of seminary, I was taught to use the King James Version and to make it a divisive issue. This is the battleground. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't see it that way anymore. Because there's more information that I realized I hadn't been given during this process. And I'm going to give you a little bit of that information right now. I don't know how deep many of you, maybe who are still in the King James only movement, are in this issue, but really, it doesn't matter how deep you are. There's things to be learned. And we really do need to be like those in Acts chapter 16 and search the scriptures to see if those things are so. We want to be like the Bereans here, not just take people's word for it, because people have been wrong in the past. And honestly, when you have a position like the KJV only position that has never, obviously, it never was held by anyone throughout most of church history. That kind of goes without saying. You can't, hold to a 1611 version before 1611. But then even now, it's such a minority position within the church. Because if you think about all the Christians around the world, this is really just one among English-speaking people. Because you'll find out here in a minute that even people in other countries who want to translate the Bible from the Greek using the majority text, if that's the argument that we're holding to and not a Ruckmanite double inspiration, the 1611 translators were inspired argument, we're holding to a majority text argument, that falls flat. Because the majority texts that we have today aren't the same ones that they had when Erasmus in the 1500s was making his Greek manuscript. I'm already speaking a foreign language to many of you, and this proves that you haven't looked into this for yourself. Seriously, give this another look. I think you'll be surprised at what you find. Listen to what this guy has to say.
There's kind of a myth that people think that, as scribes copied their manuscripts, they then destroyed them and destroyed the ones they were copying from, and then the next copy they destroyed this. That didn't happen. That was not what scribes did. And others have said, the Bible's been translated and retranslated so many times that we can't possibly tell what the original said. That presupposes that when you translate it, you throw away the original language, then you work with a second language, and on. It doesn't take 5 seconds of thought to realize that's stupid. That's not what happens.
Okay. He didn't say you're stupid. He said that idea is stupid. And people, teachers and book writers who want to imply that, maybe you could say they're stupid. But you're not stupid just because you heard something taught by your Sunday school teacher or your pastor, or you read it in a book and just believed it. Because people can make a lot of bogus statements sound legitimate. So you're not stupid, but I want you to look and see if what you believe is stupid.
The King James Bible, we still have those manuscripts that the King James New Testament was based on. The oldest is from the 11th century. 8 manuscripts were essentially used. Today, we have over 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts.
Okay, did you hear what he just said? To boil that down, this is a basic summary. There's more information even on this. But Erasmus, a guy named Desiderius Erasmus, is the primary man who compiled the Greek manuscripts in the 1500s. And between him and a couple other guys, Theodore Beza and Stephanus, there are these manuscript compilations called the Textus Receptus. The Textus Receptus is not the same thing as the majority text. Okay, I might be losing some of you, but hang on. You can even look all this stuff up. The King James Version translators in the 1600s, 1608 or whenever they began, they used the Textus Receptus to translate the King James Version primarily. So we have a lot more manuscripts now that we've discovered in monasteries and archaeological digs over the last 200 or 300 years that they didn't have then. Older ones that go back even closer to the originals. And to just write them off and say we don't need those ones because, well, God inspired the 1611, well then, if you believe in double inspiration, just come out and say that and we'll move on. But if you don't, then you have to admit that men did this and men can make mistakes. So we'll continue.
And somewhere between 15 and 20,000 manuscripts in other languages. So we have more than 1,000 times as many manuscripts, almost in Greek alone, than what the King James translators relied on. And our earliest manuscripts don't go back to the 11th century. They go back to the 2nd century. And so almost 1,000 times as many manuscripts, almost 1,000 years earlier. Modern manuscripts, or modern New Testaments, are not based on later data. But the longer we go, as time goes on, we're getting closer and closer to the original text.
All right, quickly I want to give you an example of this. If you go into your Bible app, I don't know which one you use, but the one I use is, I think it's called Tecarta. And it flows well, it works great. But just the first page in the text that I opened up, in Acts chapter 20, that just happens to be the last place I was reading. I went in, and I'm in the New King James Version right now, as you can see in the bottom left. In these new versions, they give you footnotes to tell you the textual issues while they were translating it, and the questions that they had, and the reasons they decided to put a particular word in. That's something the King James Version had originally. And they took that out in the 1769 Blaney edition. You didn't know that, did you? That you don't read the 1611 King James Version. You don't. You read this. You read either the Blaney rendition. I think there's a couple of them, but you read a later update. Anyways, if you go up to verse 34, you'll see the word yes with a little D beside it. That's a footnote. If you hold your finger on the D, this pops up. Nesialand text and majority text omit yes. Nesialand text omits yes, and the King James only people would say, well, it should. We should ignore the Nesialand because that's based on the corrupt Greek manuscripts. But wait a minute. And the majority text omits yes? I thought that the King James Version was based on the majority text. It was the majority text of the 1500s, but we have thousands more text now that we can base that on. We have more information. So now, basically, in the 1500s, when Erasmus was doing this, he would look at all the manuscripts and he would think, okay, which word should go here? Well, let's take a vote. All the manuscripts, if it should be yes, if the word yes should go here, manuscripts, all of you raise your hand. And if 75% of them raise their hand, or they had the word yes in Greek in that spot, he would go with the majority. This is very basic and boiled down, but this is kind of the gist of how he did it. And then if not many of them had it in there, he would not put it in there. Well, we found more manuscripts that in many places change that vote. More manuscripts crawled out of monasteries or out of archaeological digs and said, hey, can I have a vote here? That word yes shouldn't be there. Now look at it again. Does it matter? Does this particular word even change anything? Yes, you yourselves know that these hands have provided for my necessities. Okay? Omit yes. Or omit yes. You yourselves know that It doesn't change the message and the gist of the verse at all. So this word here could be there, it could not be there. It doesn't change a thing. But let's go over to another passage that this is one of the most controversial of the passages in this debate. 1 John 5:7. Okay, this is also known as the Comma Johannium, and it's a very hot topic, but I want to show you something. For there are three, verse 7, for there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. Okay, this is a verse teaching the Trinity. And there are three that bear witness on earth, the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And these three agree in one. All right, so that verse right there, verse 7, for there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit. These three are one. Let's hold down that B right there. Okay, Nessialand and majority text omit the words from heaven in verse 7 through on earth in verse 8. Only 4 or 5 very late manuscripts contain these words in Greek. I'll let you simmer on that for a few seconds. Think about what was just said. The Nessialand, meh, and the majority text, not all, but most of them emit verse 7 the way we have it in the King James Version. And this New King James Version is the same as the King James Version. It's just that this one, they tell you what's going on. Why is that? Why is it in there? Look it up. Desiderius Erasmus did not put that in there in his first, I think, and second editions of the Textus Receptus. Oh, wow. There's more than one Textus Receptus? Yeah, Erasmus had 4 or 5, and they were all different. Matter of fact, this verse went in there because he had pressure from the Vatican to put it in there. They wanted another proof text to back up their teaching on the Trinity, which is fine. But it's not what John wrote. The vast, overwhelming majority of evidence points towards the fact that John did not write verse 7 the way we have it in the King James Version. So you say this is an attack on the deity of Christ? No, John wasn't attacking the deity of Christ. John taught the deity of Christ more clearly than any other person who wrote a biblical text. And those other places aren't gone. As a matter of fact, even Paul writes in one place where the King James strips the deity away from Christ. And the new versions actually, they word it differently to make it look more like Christ is God. So this goes both ways. The argument is greater than we want to play it up to be. And the King James only argument really isn't looking at all the facts. So keep all this in mind as you go through this debate, and at very least, let's sideline this argument to the category of not worth fighting about.